let's talk about the Karl Anthony Towns, Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo trade between the Knicks and the Timberwolves. Now, where we stand right now, the Knicks are currently second in the Eastern Conference. Now, for their standards, it's been a relatively underwhelming performance by them this year, but again, second in the conference. As for Minnesota, I think we'd all agree they've been playing some good basketball, solid basketball. They're currently sixth in the Western Conference right now. Now, I ask you, John, we can start with you. Where we stand, did the Knicks outright lose the Karl Anthony Towns, Julius Randle trade?
You can't really say that there's been an outright result of this move yet because of how new it still is, right? We've only seen a year and a half of these two teams with their new look. I would start off, though, with the Knicks because this was a move trading Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo to get better. I feel like at the time, part of it, too, was to cover for Mitchell Robinson's impending injury, missing most of the season because they really needed a center if Mitch wasn't going to be healthy. But they also took on a very big contract in Cat. Someone's making up to $61 million over the next 3 years. And when I look at the value prop this year, last year was a different story. This trade's a tale of two halves. Both teams made the conference finals in year one of success for both teams. But as we've seen this Knicks team, and we've watched their deficiencies and their limitations with their star duo defensively, it is clear to me that a move like this does put a clear cap on the Knicks ceiling. Whereas for Minnesota, Julius Randle's been playing better this season. He's making $20 million less, and you're getting Dante DiVincenzo on top of that. And the Wolves' main goal here was to shed salary, to be able to extend some of their younger guys, be able to extend Naz Reid, and to not hit that second apron burden with their impending ownership questions as to who was going to own the team at the time. So for the Wolves, they've gotten the more value out of this trade. But I also believe it comes down to whether or not the Knicks make the finals with Cat. And right now, I don't feel confident in that unless they are able to get Giannis Antetokounmpo. And with the Mikal Bridges trade, I think it's very hard to get enough assets to do so.
Now, I'm not going to say the Knicks lost. That's just an outlandish thing to say, especially considering they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. They're one of the best offenses in basketball last season. And their goal when making the Karl Anthony Towns trade and the Mikal Bridges trade, to be fair, was to get over the hump of Boston. We want to get past the Boston Celtics because we think that they are the king of the crop. They succeeded. They beat, in our estimation, the best team at worst, second best team in basketball last year.
Fucking frauds.
Right. They choked. That's true. You guys gagged. Whether you want to admit it or not, fine. You guys won in 2024. You guys gagged last year. But their mission last year was to beat the Celtics.
What year in 2023?
Which team?
The Warriors.
Oh, man.
It's a tough combo. It's a tough combo to have that. The Warriors conversation right now is at an all-time low. However,
it's hard to go back to back.
When it comes to Minnesota,
it's hard to win 4 rings, bitch.
Yeah, well, 2 of them you don't even count.
So 2?
I mean, 2 is still greater than your 1.
We could get 2.
How do you know that?
Who wins the championship in the next 5 years? Who's more likely? Boston or Warriors?
If you get Giannis, they could win this year.
I doubt it.
That's probably also capped too. I don't think they're going to win even to get Giannis.
It's okay because you getting Tatum won't mean shit.
We have a better chance still of the next 5 years to win than y'all. You don't have
Giannis. In this hypothetical, that'd be viral.
Yeah, that's fine.
That would be viral. Now, for Minnesota, getting Julius Randle, getting Dante DiVincenzo. Now, DiVincenzo, very good role player, great shooter, shooting 38% from 3 this season, 13 points per game. He's been great. But Julius Randle also has been pretty damn good in his own right. The one variable that you look at Minnesota, and it has been consistent, has been their defense. Julius Randle is by no means a bad defender. I actually think he's a pretty solid defender. They're not overwhelmingly great on defense because of him, though. We know why. It's because Rudy Gobert is a top 2, top 3 defender at worst in the world right now. On top, they just have so many great defensive players, but they're anchored by Rudy Gobert. When you look at the Knicks, they are still a top 3 offense in basketball this year, and this has been, while they've been, for all intensive purposes, a little bit underwhelming. Why do we call them underwhelming? Because they're not first to the Detroit Pistons, who a decent amount of people thought they would be better and come to the season. I feel like the way that people are perceiving the Knicks so far is because, or in a negative light so far, is because Karl Anthony Towns has not been the efficient guy that he was last year. They're not first in the conference. That's it.
They ain't getting first.
That's it. That's the only reason why people look at the Knicks in a negative light. OG Anunoby's been excellent this season. Jalen Brunson, when he's been on the court, has been excellent this season. Mitchell Robinson has been excellent this season. Their bench has played a critical part in their success this year as well, which they had 0 of last year. Now, Karl Anthony Towns is struggling. He's shooting 36% from 3, which is the worst that he shot, I think, maybe ever in his career.
Ain't bad if you're struggling at 36 still.
7'36". Now, when you have set the standard that he has, I'm not going to sit here and say that that's good because he has been consistently known as arguably the best three-point shooter at the big position. Fine. In a terrible down year for him, he's still averaging 20. They're still the 3rd offense in basketball. Did they lose the trade? How can you say that when they went to the ECF last year? I really wish Joel was here because
He would say they lost.
maybe I'm wrong. I don't know if anybody here is going to say they outright lost.
I don't think. If they lost, I don't know. I think a lot of Knicks fans are fed up with Cat, and I think Joel's fed up with Cat because, first of all, the duo of Brunson and Cat is redundant in a sense, just because they're both offensive-minded players and they both have real defensive deficiencies for different reasons. But I think Knicks fans are upset with Cat because, yeah, you're not getting any dirty work with him, right? He's going to average a lot of rebounds, but you're not getting any defensive presence, any rim protection or rim deterrence or whatever rim stat you want to say. I think that's why Knicks fans are upset with it, because not that you were expecting to get that from Karl Anthony Towns, but that feels like what you need to get over the hump and get to the finals. Because when you look at just the results, you're right, Drew, right? They're second in the East. That was after struggling before this players only meeting. I forgot what it was, like 10 to 12, so it was like
They
9
were
of 12, something
not-
like that.
yeah.
9 of
They
12,
were
I think
really,
lost.
really struggling.
Really struggling. They've been playing better though in just the last week or so. But I think Knicks fans aren't really looking at the results right now because they're like, we know the East fucking sucks. Like Boston was supposed to be in a rebuild and they were tied with us in the 2nd seed. Detroit's won. Cleveland has completely fallen off. The Magic have been disappointing. So cool, we're the 2nd seed. But, I mean, look at the East. Like, I don't think there's anything to write home about. Just like you said, they have the same record as Minnesota, who's the 6th seed in the Western Conference.
Yep.
So I just think grand scheme, big picture, it's like, do we really have a chance? Like, do we actually have a chance to maybe make the finals? And even if we get to the finals, we're looking at some dogs over there in the Western Conference that, I mean, you're probably taking 3, maybe 4 teams in the West if the Knicks are just matching up. It's difficult because, number one, the Cat contract is huge. In a couple years, he'll be making $60 million. And I know a lot of the Giannis trades involve Karl Anthony Towns. If I'm the Bucks, I want nothing to do with him. I don't want that contract, and I don't want to be good, so I don't want Cat, who's going to contribute to me winning. So I'm not looking at that as a valuable player for Milwaukee, even though he's still a good player. And it's just for this team, you need to do what the Mavericks did around Luka, which is no defensive efficiencies outside of maybe Kyrie Irving, but even Kyrie by himself is, I think, a fine just one-on-one defender, even though he's small. But that's not what they did. They have great pieces. Mikal, especially OG and Mitchell Robinson, could be just stellar defensively, some of the best at their own position. But the guy that is the 2nd best player on your team that you want to be closing games with and being the most important minutes, it just doesn't work defensively. Like, you saw them get picked apart in that Indiana series, and even moments in the Boston series in Detroit as well. So I think Knicks fans I think you have 2 different groups. I think you have one group that is like, listen, man, I'm 30 years old. We've been asked for 25 years of my life, and we're the best we've ever been, whatever. And then you have another group of Knicks fans, which I think Joel falls in this bucket, where it's like, Cat's just not it. Like, Cat's not going to be the guy that gets us over the hump. Cat's not going to be the guy that when we're, holding the finals trophy, that he's going to be the guy that's doing that. And what team is going to be able to take on that contract and all of the deficiencies and issues that come with Karl Anthony Towns? So it's probably too early to say. No, neither team made the finals, right? I think Randall and Cat, in terms of just their level of play, have been somewhat equal over the last couple of seasons. But I think Knicks fans have a right to look at the big picture and say, this isn't going to work.
I think it's interesting. I think first of all, going back to the trade, I feel like both teams made the trades for different reasons. I think New York felt like they can go over the hump with Cat. They can at least get to a couple conference championships, maybe even sneak into the finals. And I also think with Minnesota, it was more about cap flexibility for them. So I think that's why they've obviously gotten probably a little bit more than what they thought they would get with Julius Randle.
Oh, easily.
Dante DiVincenzo, he's like the fakest nice shooter I've ever seen in my life. But he's a good role player. He's
a good role player.
He's so streaky. It's
38%,
funny.
38%.
I feel like most role players are.
He's just so streaky. It's Dante's just weird. He's not a bad player though. He can heat up at any moment. And I think the package they got was solid. And I think Randall's been awesome for them. Granted, they've gotten, progression from Jaden McDaniels as an efficient scorer. Rudy's great. Nas Reed has been great off the bench, and then Ant obviously keeps improving their game. But I think both teams made it for different reasons, and they both made the finals. I think the process for Minnesota was fine. I think for New York, I get the big picture. I think what's always going to be the issue for me is the Mikal Bridges trade
Easily.
that kind of put them in this tough position where they really can't move off Cat unless it's for a guy like Giannis. But if the Knicks make the ECF again this year, like, I'm going to say they failed. No, I think the expectation to win a championship every year, I get some teams for having it. It makes sense. But I also think it's hard to just think if you don't make the championship, it's just automatically a failure of a season. It depends on how you go out, what injuries happen and stuff like that. So it all depends. Like, I think last year, objectively, you can say the Knicks failed in a sense. I feel like
I think the opposite.
I
I
think
think last year
first-
was a success.
I
This
think-
year would be a failure.
I think the expectation coming out of Boston changed, and that's why you can say they failed. Going into Boston,
good
it was
point.
like Boston should clearly win. After they beat Boston, it's like New York should go to the finals. That's
To
what
be-
it is.
to be
so I think
fair-
they
sorry,
had
Riff.
3 different seasons in which they had 3 different points of expectations.
It's true.
And then, they just got to one, didn't get to this one. So I think it was different for New York where everything changed from throughout the year. But I think this year, you're looking at the East, and outside of Detroit and maybe Boston exceeding expectations, everybody's been struggling. Cleveland's been dealing with their injuries, and if they can't shoot the ball, everything falls apart for them. Orlando's still trying to figure out their offense, although they've been playing a little bit better as of late. You're getting as Anthony Black improvement and Desmond Bane's going back to form. Those are the 2 swing factors. A team like Atlanta just completely said, fuck all this, and I feel like they've looked worse without Trae Young in a sense. And then Miami's Miami. Philly's that one team where if they're healthy for a
They're
7-game
scary, bro.
series, they're scary, but that's the thing. Are they healthy for a
yeah,
7-game
it's every year.
series? So really, like, outside of Detroit, and even then, it still feels like Detroit, love them to death, probably the best defense outside of OKC in the NBA. They still have a hole at shooting. They still have a hole on that other offensive creator who's going to be that for them. How are they going to figure that out? But even then, they still win games with putrid offense at times. So I can't call anybody a loser yet. I can say it's still a progression to wait and see. I think Minnesota reached their goal, and now they're just continuing to have that success. With New York, if they lose in like the second round this year, I can definitely be like, all right, Minnesota won the trade.
Listen, year 1 with Cat was a big success because he had one of his best seasons, and just being the Celtics in and of itself was one of the biggest surprises in the last couple of years in the NBA. And the reason why people had such high expectations for the Knicks was in part because very few people respected Indiana, because everyone looked at the Cavaliers being decimated in the second round series and didn't give them respect up until Tyrese Halliburton stealing game 1 from the Thunder, and they're going to game 7 against OKC, and then people are like, oh shit, this Pacer team's good enough to beat one of the best teams we've seen
But
in
before
recent
that,
memory.
before the season, even before they played Boston, I remember vividly, people were like, all right, they got Mikal. They got OG. They got guys that can match up with Boston. They were putting maybe not on the same level, but they were calling it the team that
Puncher's
could,
chance.
And
yeah,
at
like
this
a puncher's
time
chance
a
for
year
sure.
ago, all of us looked at the Knicks and said they aren't making that step forward that we all expected them,
Yeah,
or
'cause
at least
we
they
went 4-0
expected
against
to
the regular
make
season.
when they got Mikal and when they got
I
Carl
also
Towns.
think our perception on the Knicks in the postseason itself shifted an insane amount of times. You go in, you play the Pistons, you're thinking,
Pistons win with beef stew.
Yeah, that's a great
This
take.
wasn't a pretty series for the Knicks.
He could have swung that
You kind of,
series.
you kind
They had
of
Paul
escaped.
Reed in games.
The Pistons played great basketball every single game. The Knicks were clutch. They were very great
More
situationally. More experienced team is a great way to put it too. They were able to move on. So we're left with a sour image in our minds because they look so shaky against the Pistons that they go up against the Celtics. They beat them. They kind of dominate them in a certain way that now we're thinking, you just beat the best team in our eyes. Why can't you go to the finals? So, Riv, you're not too far off. The only reason why I will be a little bit more lax on my usual approach is because it was their first ECF appearance in a quarter of a century.
That's fair.
That's the only reason why I say success. You accomplished a mission that you haven't accomplished in a quarter of a century. Karl Anthony Towns played arguably the best basketball of his NBA career. Him and Jalen Brunson were one of the best offensive duos in basketball. And then the Indiana series happened and you got exposed defensively because neither Brunson or Karl Anthony Towns could play a lick of defense. Now, notice how one player got scrutinized the entirety of the playoffs because of his defense.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because Jalen Brunson's continuously one of the best offensive players in the game. He's consistent. He's one of the best 3-level scorers in the game. It's Karl Anthony Towns that gets a majority of the heat because sometimes night to night you don't know what player you're going to get offensively.
It's true.
And this year, more than any...
Brunson's also 6 feet, so it's like, yeah.
Very true. Very
Generous
true.
6 feet.
And obviously he's limited to only do a certain amount of things on the defensive side of the ball. But what he can control on the offensive side, he is elite. Yeah. Which is why I can understand fans being upset, disgruntled with Karl Anthony Towns, because you expect more from him and you think that his drive could be a little bit more. But last year, he gave you everything.
I agree.
Yeah, he had some great moments in the Pacers series too.
He did.
If
He did.
if you could read, okay, so we're saying did the Knicks lose the trade? Do you think the Knicks right now, if they could redo the trade, would they? Would they take Randall and Dante
I think so,
back
because
for Cat?
Cat's gonna get 50 to 60 million.
He's getting
in
paid a
couple
lot.
Years. Like, I think that money is ridiculous. That's the problem. And then the Brunson. Listen, Cat can't defend. Like, he can't. I also think it puts you in a crutch because Jalen Brunson's a dog. Historically, guards don't win.
But it's also one thing that Cat did for Brunson that isn't overly talked about is the spacing.
Yeah.
Brunson's ability to get to the cup now that Julius isn't around or near the basket. That's huge. That you have to actually allow you're forcing the big to come out because you have to guard Karl Anthony Towns. Now this year, Karl isn't shooting his normal clip. Fine. But last year, we saw the impact that he had, the gravity that he had, and all these centers being forced to play at least somewhat respecting outside the paint. And Brunson, we know, is an elite finisher at the cup.
Yeah, this year though with Mitch healthy, I mean, they're closing with Mitch sometimes
Which makes
over
sense,
Cat,
honestly.
you know. So it's
He
like
really's been great.
You get the spacing with Cat at the 5, but Mitch is, I mean, well, Mitch is right. He's one of the best rebounders in leagues.
You're right.
You know, great rim protector. So
Fair point.
It kind of takes away from it. I don't know. It's tough for New York. I think because Rib, I disagreed a bit in terms of if they go to the ECF this year, it's a success, and then they lose, I think it's a failure. Like, if you go to the ECF and you lose to Detroit, and that's not taking anything away from Detroit, who I think is great. Obviously, the 1 seed for a reason, but it's like, I mean, that's a series. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to have just as good of a chance than we said last year against Indiana, and maybe it was on us for not giving Indiana enough respect going into that series, because obviously they took care of business, and then who knows what happens if Hallie stays healthy in Game 7 of the finals. But yeah, I mean, you're telling me beginning of the season you have a matchup with Detroit in the ECF and you lose, and last year you match with the Pacers in the ECF and you lose. So I feel like if you go back-to-back years where you're going into the Eastern Conference Finals saying like, this is anyone's game. Like, we think we have the best player, as great as Cade is. Like, Jalen Brunson's right there with him, and all the inexperience that Detroit has. And I don't know. I think a lot of Knicks fans shouldn't, and it'd feel like a bit of a failure. It feels like a missed opportunity, because each year, we said it last year, we're saying it this year, but it's like, is it going to be easier next year, right? Like, if Boston's healthy, if Cleveland, they're a whole different issue, but I don't know. This feels like a prime opportunity for the Knicks to at least get to the finals. So they get to the finals, they lose to OKC, they lose to Denver. It is what it is. You got to the finals, but at least get there.
Yeah. Okay. A lot of it is based off the landscape of the Eastern Conference. We knew when Jason Tatum and Tyrese Halliburton tore their Achilles, the Knicks were going to have an even better chance this season to take that next step forward. And then we watched the Cavaliers this year not have the same synergy. So it really is, in a sense, the Celtics without Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown leading this elite offense. The Pistons, which are still not the most experienced team. They showed last year their battle tested. They showed their toughness last year. Yeah, it's shooting. It really is the spacing. And they're still the first seed. And then it's the Knicks. So if there's ever going to be a chance to make the NBA Finals, their percentage odds of making it this year, they're going to be higher.
Oddly enough, New York, Boston, Toronto, and Cleveland have the same wins.
Yeah, I know they're tied for second. And eventually, I mean, this money's going to be due for all these guys. You paid McCall, you paid OG, you paid Brunson. I know he took a discount. Some of these guys didn't. You paid Cat, so it's like you got good bench players this year and Jordan Clarkson. So yeah, it's tough, man. Cat
will be a top 10 paid player in the NBA next year.
Cat and OG are at $100 million.
When Giannis and Jokic get their extensions, and maybe Anthony Davis, he'll probably go from the 8th to 10th or 11th highest paid player in the NBA.
I think you make a good point, John. The minute that Tatum got injured, the minute that Halliburton got injured, there was such a wide open door for the New York Knicks, and everybody thought that this was, if not this year, when were you going to make it to the finals?